feeding you the same video in your recommended section endlessly until you finally just throw in the towel after they've chipped away at you enough to just watch it just to get rid of the recommended. And a lot of times it has nothing to do with the content you've watched before. So like in many cases for me, YouTube will just decide, Charles, you need to watch this video. So it plasters it front and center on the home page, and anytime I watch a video, it's right there in the recommended, just constantly being shoved down my fucking throat. And no matter how many times I leave the platform and come back over the course of a day, a week, doesn't matter, it's still there. It's like the bye-bye, man. Don't think it, don't say it, but it's always there. You can't escape it. YouTube like traps you in a genjutsu where all you see is this one video they really think that you have to see. And I know that this is not groundbreaking new information. YouTube's algorithm is all about trying to soul read you and keeping you hooked on the platform like it's fucking heroin here, so that way it's feeding you things that you always want to see. But in many cases, for me personally, a lot of what they are trying to serve me on the plate, like give me the spoonful, telling me the airplane's coming in, is shit that I don't consume in the first place. And I don't know if something's changed internally at YouTube or if this is a common thing everyone else is experiencing as well, but I've been getting significantly more notifications to my phone telling me that channels I'm not subscribed to are uploading content that I'd never even watch in the first place. Like it's types of content that I'm not an avid viewer of. So I've been getting notifications like YouTube grabbing me by the shoulders, shaking me like, Charlie, you've got to see this. Did you know Wiley Shitterman just uploaded a new disposable camera review? And maybe it knows me better than I think it does. I guess credit where credit is due, because it does actually get me to click it sometimes. And I'll click it, and some of them have less than like 300 fucking views. It's like, how did YouTube even find this to try and give me a notification for it? But today, they gave me one that was so incomprehensible, it's made me want to talk about this whole subject and the video itself. It's this right here. For the last 6 or 7 hours, YouTube has decided that this is what I have to see. It is a video that's not even in English, and it's a guy eating the food that's a little too crispy. Now, it is auto-dubbed, so I can at least kind of follow the plot here, like I'm not lost on the lore. It is so fascinating.
Good morning, everyone. This is the legendary Haneda Airport.
Really good to what the content creator here is trying to express. But this guy is really good. I ended up really liking this video. He's got his hair set up kind of like Mads Mikkelsen from Death Stranding. And it's just classic YouTube, like OG YouTube. He's going to eat an old-fashioned donut that unfortunately is a bit too crispy for his palate. And that's about as deep as it goes. It's quite an adventure. It's not, I haven't watched a donut review on YouTube or anything like that in recent memory. I don't know why YouTube is showing me this so adamantly. It is very insistent on me watching this video, but I was captivated. Now, I'm assuming that the auto-dubbing is some kind of AI system that took the original video, which I imagine he was doing a voiceover for, and translates it to English automatically and has the text-to-speech guy here say it. I think this is all an automated system. I don't know if the YouTuber here set it up on his end or what, but my guess is the original video here, he is doing a voiceover in his native language, and then AI comes and dubs it over for the sake of serving me this video, I guess.
The packaging is surprisingly hard, isn't it? Usually, it takes a long time to open something like this. I have a lot of time. I'm going to open something like this. So, I'll put it in. I've warmed it up. Oh, wait. Yes. Furry.
See what I mean with the dubbing feeling a bit odd? I don't think he was saying furry. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Why would he be saying furry while busting out the moves like this? The guy is grooving here. He's hitting like a full-blown routine. I don't think he'd just be saying the word furry over and over again. I have to imagine he was singing something that the dubbing couldn't quite make sense of, and for some reason it defaulted to just saying furry over and over again. Or I could be very wrong, and maybe this is like a viral dance, the furry dance, that I just don't know. It is entirely possible. I'm 30 years old. Maybe this one's just slid under my radar here. The only dances I know are fucking whipping nay and crank that soldier boy.
Today's frilly down.
I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but I think what's going on here is actually grounds to deem that this activist group might have just become the next Sweet Baby Inc., and I'm not kidding. Some context for those unaware, my previous video on this, I spoke about an activist group called Collective Shout. They're a woman-led organization that works to censor and remove anything they disagree with, pretty much no matter the medium, the institution, or even the company. It doesn't matter to them. It can be anything that they find that
I'm not interested in listening to this.
Breaking! The president is about to fire Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. Maybe. And that is very, very bad news for the U.S. economy. See, the economy is a lot like a train, and that guy, the conductor, is the chair of the Federal Reserve. His job is to be smart about when to speed up or press the brakes. By necessity, that job has to be independent. But Trump is not about independent federal agencies. He wants warp speed ahead right now, and Powell isn't having it because that's a surefire way to send the whole thing off the rails. On Wednesday, July 16th, multiple news outlets reported that Powell's ouster was inevitable. The New York Times said that the president had drafted a termination letter and waved it around the Oval Office when a bunch of Republican House members came to talk to him about crypto. Florida Representative Anna Paulina Luna tweeted that Jerome Powell is going to be fired. Firing is imminent. The stock market was not amused and only rallied when Trump used the occasion of a press conference with the Crown Prince of Bahrain to deny it.
Now, if you decide that you are going to fire him, have you drafted a letter?
I haven't drafted a letter.
So you didn't show a letter to Republican lawmakers last night?
No, I talked about the concept of fire him. I said, what do you think? Almost every one of them said I should. But I'm more conservative than they are.
And while some Republicans are calling for Powell's head, others are warning that firing him will cause the stock market to crash.
If you fire the chairman of the Federal Reserve, you will see the stock market crash, and you will see the bond market crash.
That was Louisiana Senator John Kennedy, who plays a simple country lawyer on TV despite having degrees from Oxford and the University of Virginia. The seersucker is a nice touch. But before we get to whether the president should fire Powell, train wreck, let's talk about whether he can. Can the president just fire the chairman of the Federal Reserve? Well, the answer to that one is no, but maybe we should back up for a minute and talk about what the Federal Reserve is and why the president is so mad about it. The Federal Reserve, aka the Fed, is America's central bank. It's tasked with managing the nation's monetary policy, which means it's basically the economic conductor for the whole country. It does that by buying or selling government bonds to increase or decrease money supply, and crucially, by setting interest rates. The Fed is made up of 12 regional reserve banks and a board of governors based in D.C. The board consists of 7 members nominated by the president and approved by the Senate to staggered 14-year terms. Jerome Powell is currently the chair of this board. The Federal Open Markets Committee, or FOMC, is composed of the 7 governors plus a rotating roster of the 5 regional bank heads, although the New York Fed always gets a seat at the table. The committee meets at least 8 times a year to set the federal funds rate, which is the benchmark rate for borrowing among banks. Because so much lending is tied to the federal funds rate, it functions as a key mechanism for the reserve bankers to speed up or slow down the economy. Lower interest rates make it cheaper to borrow money, so Americans feel richer and spend more, which stimulates the economy and lowers unemployment. Higher interest rates do exactly the opposite. So why wouldn't you just keep rates low all the time? Well, if unemployment is already low and you juice demand by lowering interest rates more, it raises prices for goods and services, aka inflation. So it's a balancing act. Here's a chart showing 35 years of federal funds rates. See how the Fed dropped the rate to almost zero in 2020 and 2021 during the worst of the coronavirus pandemic, and then raised it in 2022 when the economy recovered. That's one of the ways the Fed protects and regulates the economy. Crank the money machine up when things slow down and then dial it back when things are going fine so there'll be something left for the next crisis. And everything stays on the rails. But that often puts the Fed in conflict with the president because politicians always favor lower rates. I mean, if your electoral prospects are tied to voters' subjective feelings about the economy, you want them feeling good and spending. But too much spending causes inflation, and so it's the Fed's job to take away the punch bowl, as they say, and raise rates to cool things off. That's why it's critical for the Federal Reserve to remain independent of politics so it's free to do politically unpopular things to ensure the health and stability of the economy. It's also the reason Trump hates Jerome Powell.
Now we have a man that just refuses to lower the Fed rate, just refuses to do it. And he's not a smart person. I don't even think he's that political. I think he hates me, but that's okay. You know, he should. He should. I call him every name in the book, trying to get him to do something.
The chairman of the Federal Reserve is nominated by the president from among the 7 members of the Board of Governors and then confirmed by the Senate to a 4-year term. Fed chairs are almost always renominated for multiple terms since stable governance makes markets happy. But in 2018, Trump decided Janet Yellen was too short to understand monetary policy, so he promoted Powell to the job instead. But he seems to have forgotten about that part recently.
Fed chair, I was surprised he was appointed. I was surprised, frankly, that Biden put him in and extended him.
Powell, a veteran of George H.W. Bush's Treasury Department, was originally named to the Board of Governors by Barack Obama. But despite being almost a foot taller than Janet Yellen, he favored the same disciplined, moderate strategy as his predecessor and continued to raise interest rates moderately until COVID hit. Within months of nominating him, Trump soured on his pick, calling Powell crazy, loco, and out of control. He urged the Fed to feel the market and don't just go by meaningless numbers. By 2019, he was referring to Powell as our enemy and saying he believed he had the authority to fire Powell or at least demote him from chair to being a simple member of the Board of Governors. Trump was dissuaded from trying to fire Powell in 2019 when his advisors warned that it would cause the stock market to crash because the Fed only works when markets believe that it will do the right thing, not the thing that's politically expedient in the short term. If the president's cronies are in charge of setting interest rates, they have every incentive to crank the thermostat all the way up, pouring money into the economy, inviting Americans to buy, which is all good right up until it's not, because too much money sloshing around risks triggering an inflationary spiral. Between 1971 and 1978, the U.S. did experience high inflation, at least in part because Fed Chair Arthur Burns refused to lower interest rates, which topped 11% in 1978. Burns was loyal to President Richard Nixon, who appointed him, and since Nixon had a habit of taping his conversations, we know that he leaned on Burns to keep interest rates high. In 1971, before he nominated Burns, Nixon said that he expected his relations with the Fed under Burns would be different than they were with previous Federal Reserve Chairman Bill Martin. He complained that Martin was always too late and said, "I'm counting on you, Arthur, to keep us out of a recession," to which Burns said, "Yes, Mr. President, I don't like to be late." But then, look at this next line. Nixon said, "I know there's the myth of the autonomous Fed, and when you go up for confirmation, some senator may ask you about your friendship with the president. Appearances are going to be important, so you can call White House counsel John Ehrlichman to get messages to me, and he'll call you." Nixon understood that it was important for Burns to at least appear to be independent of the president, so Burns should feel free to come over and see Nixon privately, but he should reach out indirectly through Ehrlichman, because public perception that the central bank is politically independent is a cornerstone of the American market. I mean, in the simplest of terms, people have faith in the U.S. economy because monetary policy is not subordinated to politics, and firing Powell would directly undermine that. Congressional Republicans are keenly aware of this, and so it's interesting to see if their freakout is making its way to not just the MAGA base, but liberal progressives. We can do that by taking a bird's eye view of the media landscape. Republican senators warning Trump not to fire the Fed chair was covered by about 170 sources, with 25% reporting from the left, 55% from the center, and 20% from the right. And the differences could not be more stark. While some sources on the right disparaged Powell's tenure as the luxury Fed, most agreed his termination would be a bad thing, with one source even calling Trump flat out wrong. In the center, most headlines focused on the threat to the independence of the Fed and why that matters. And from the left, coverage focused on the countless people in Trump's orbit warning him, including his lawyers. But headlines and coverage on this story varied greatly depending on the source. That's why I love today's sponsor, Ground News. The Nobel Peace Center called Ground News an excellent way to stay informed, avoid echo chambers, numbers and expand your worldview. Ground News gathers related articles from across the world and across the political spectrum so you can see the bias and compare coverage. Every story comes with a quick visual breakdown of the political bias, factuality, and ownership of the sources reporting, all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations. One of my favorite parts is their bias comparison feature, which highlights specific differences in reporting across the political spectrum. I also love their blind spot feature, which shows you stories that are underreported by either side of the political spectrum. And stories that have major economic consequences often get ignored because of political bias, like this story about Trump threatening to end BRICS if it ever formed in a meaningful way. That's a major economic bloc between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. This story was almost entirely ignored by left-leaning sources. Ground News is my favorite way to get the news, and as a legal eaglet, you can save 40% off the Ground News Vantage subscription by scanning the code on the screen or clicking on the link down below. This subscription gives you unlimited access to every feature, including the Bias Insight tool and blind spot feed. So click now, or we will see you in court. During the 2024 election, Trump's advisors came up with a plan to blunt the power of the Fed by firing Powell and installing someone in his place who would consult with Trump on interest rate changes, explicitly subjecting the Federal Reserve to political control. In April of 2024, the Wall Street Journal reported that Trump's closest advisors had formulated a new policy vision for the central bank. They argued that the president should be consulted on interest rate decisions and the Treasury Department should be used as a check on the central bank. The group also claimed that Trump could legally fire Powell or at least remove him as president of the Board of Governors. Trump's team denied the report, sort of. But almost as soon as he got back into office, Trump started complaining about Powell again. And in a weird echo of Nixon's critique of Fed Chair Bill Martin, he's calling Powell too late. On May 8th, he posted, "Too late, Jerome Powell is a fool who doesn't have a clue. Other than that, I like him very much. Oil and energy way down, almost all costs, groceries and, quote, eggs down, virtually no inflation, tariff money pouring into the U.S. The exact opposite of too late. Enjoy." Okay, look. This is a law channel, not an economics channel, but tariffs are inherently inflationary. They literally raise the price of imported goods. Have a video on that subject. Have two. That's why inflation is slowly ticking up as Trump erratically ratchets up tariffs on all our trading partners. He's currently threatening to impose massive tariffs on virtually every country on Earth on August 1, which is exactly why the Fed is not cutting interest rates. On July 17th, Fed Governor Adriana Kugler said that the Fed was holding interest rates steady because there are many reasons to think that the larger effects of tariffs are still coming, including inflation. Right now, prices are rising slowly, but there is a very real risk that we could see price hikes in the short term if Trump's threatened tariffs go into effect. And if that does happen, the Fed conductors are going to need some margin of interest rates to cut in response to a sudden market contraction. Besides which, we have pretty low unemployment right now, so there's no emergency that's going to require us to burn our seed corn. Trump doesn't care about that, though. He demands that the Fed cut rates by 3 points and promises that $1 trillion a year would be saved. He says that too late Powell must now lower the rate. He is unbelievable. Europe has lowered 9 times. Here's White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt on June 30th holding up a handwritten note from Trump to Powell saying, "Jerome, you are as usual too late. You have cost the USA a fortune and continue to do so. You should lower the rate by a lot. Hundreds of billions of dollars being lost. No inflation." You'll note that this message is scrawled on a list of central bank rates from other countries with a suggestion that the U.S. should be at under 2%. Again, this is a law show, but American unemployment is at 4%. That is functionally full employment for the U.S. It is above 6% in the EU, and not for nothing, but it's not just U.S. central bankers bracing for Trump's tariffs. The entire world is holding its breath. Okay, now let's talk about the law. The Federal Reserve was created by the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, currently codified at 12 U.S.C. sections 241 through 253. Section 242 says that the Fed chair shall be designated by the president by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to serve as chairman of the board for a term of 4 years unless sooner removed for cause by the president. For cause is the key language here. Cause means you did something wrong, not just you didn't bring down interest rates when the president really wanted you to. The Federal Reserve is structured to insulate it from political pressure. Allowing the president to fire the Fed chair at will would completely defeat that purpose. But there are a whole lot of federal agencies set up by Congress with more or less identical language, and the Supreme Court recently issued a pile of shadow docket orders saying, "Go for it, Donnie," basically overturning a long line of cases saying that Congress could protect agency heads from being fired by the president. It all goes back to a Depression-era case called Humphrey's Executor v. U.S. In 1933, President Franklin Roosevelt fired Federal Trade Commissioner William Humphrey. The Federal Trade Commission Act specifies that commissioners may be removed by the president for inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office. Roosevelt called this an unconstitutional limitation on his executive power, but the Supreme Court disagreed and said that the protection was legal because the FTC had quasi-judicial and quasi-legislative functions rather than serving as a purely executive branch agency, and Congress was thus entitled to protect commissioners from partisan interference. The ruling in 1935 came too late for Humphrey, who died the year before. That's why the plaintiff was Humphrey's executor, as in the executor of his estate, rather than the man himself. But now the case itself is more or less dead too. The body blow came during the first Trump administration in a 2020 case called Saylor Law v. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Under the Dodd-Frank Act, which established the CFPB, the director could only be removed for inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office, just like our pal Humphrey. But the Supreme Court let Trump fire acting director Leandra English anyway because they said the for-cause provision violated the separation of powers. Chief Justice John Roberts drew a distinction between the CFPB, an independent agency led by a single director and vested with significant executive power, and the FTC, which was a multi-member commission where no individual member wielded president-like authority. Now, you could say that after Saylor Law, Humphrey and his executor were only mostly dead. In theory, Congress could still protect members of multi-member boards and commissions from being fired without cause.
Well, it just so happens that your friend here is only mostly dead.
But in 2025, the Supreme Court let Trump fire members of the National Labor Relations Board and the Merit Systems Protection Board, two multi-member boards whose appointees were also protected by statute from being fired without cause. On May 22nd, the 6 conservative justices wrote, "The government is likely to show that both the NLRB and MSPB exercise considerable executive power, and the government faces greater risk of harm from an order allowing a removed officer to continue exercising the executive power than a wrongfully removed officer faces from being unable to perform her statutory duty." And with that, Humphrey's executor stopped being mostly dead and became well and truly all the way dead. And if Humphrey's executor is dead, that would strongly suggest that Trump has the power to fire anyone in the executive branch at any time and for any reason, including Fed Chair Jerome Powell. In fact, a bunch of law professors filed an amicus brief warning that allowing Trump to fire MSPB and NLRB members would necessarily mean he could fire Powell too. They said staying the district court's judgment in this matter could shake belief in the Fed's capacity to act independently in formulating monetary policy and addressing financial instability. The court cannot easily avoid these consequences by simply announcing a Fed exception. You guys are never going to guess what happened next. Respondents contend that arguments in this case necessarily implicate the constitutionality of for-cause removal protections for members of the Federal Reserve's Board of Governors or other members of the Federal Open Markets Committee. We disagree. The Federal Reserve is a uniquely structured quasi-private entity that follows in the distinct historical tradition of the first and second banks of the United States. See Saylor Law. See Saylor Law? In what universe does that explain how the Federal Reserve Board of Governors is totally different from the Merit Systems Protection Board and the National Labor Relations Board? And why would Donald Trump feel constrained by a couple of sentences of dicta in a shadow docket ruling when he's out there trying to cancel birthright citizenship and steal Congress's power over the budget? For the moment, Trump seems to have backed off the idea of firing Powell for the crime of refusing to lower interest rates on command. But at that presser with the Bahraini prince, he used the word fraud several times.
I don't rule out anything, but I think it's highly unlikely unless he has to leave fraud. I mean, it's possible there's fraud involved with the $2.5, $2.7 billion renovation. This is a renovation. How do you spend $2.7 billion? And he didn't have proper clearance, et cetera, et cetera. So you know that's going on. So there could be something to that, but I think he's not doing a good job. He's got a very easy job to do. You know what he has to do? Lower interest rates.
And around July 14th, the entire White House started making weird noises about Powell engaging in fraud with respect to the renovation of the Federal Reserve Building. Here's William Pulte, chairman of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, claiming that the project is riddled with fraud because Jerome Powell is an idiot who thinks tariffs raise prices and cause inflation. Here's Russ Vaught, one of the principal architects of Project 2025 and the current chair of the Office of Management and Budget, getting indignant on CNBC and hyping a letter he sent to Powell demanding answers. And here's Deputy White House Chief of Staff James Blair spending 3 straight days tweeting about the supposed luxury renovation of the Fed building. Classy. Let's just say if you were trying to manufacture a reason to fire Powell for cause, there's not a lot you would be doing differently. In response, the Federal Reserve put out a fact sheet on the renovation of its two buildings, which has been planned since 2017. It attributes the cost overruns to the presence of greater amounts of asbestos and lead than originally anticipated, both of which require expensive remediation measures, as well as differences over time between original estimates and actual costs of materials, equipment, and labor. I think it's pretty safe to translate that one as a reference to steel and lumber tariffs. The Fed claims that the marble and executive elevators are original to the 90-year-old buildings, which are both on the historic registry, and the so-called rooftop garden they're all complaining about as some kind of lavish excess is actually the front lawn, which serves as the roof for the underground parking garage. Powell even asked the Federal Reserve Board's Inspector General to review the project and its budget. Politico reports that Trump has more or less reconciled himself to living with Powell until the end of his term in May of 2026, but the president hopes to put pressure on him by publicly accusing him of fraud. Quote, "Is it a good thing to point out to damage this guy's image? Yeah." Trump wants Powell to resign, but Powell says he intends to serve out his term. If Trump does try to fire him, there are a lot of ways it could go down, and none of them are good. Powell could agree to leave, allowing Trump to appoint a successor, signaling to the markets that the era of the Fed's independence is over. Powell could leave and then sue, forcing a showdown at the Supreme Court, which would, again, probably make the stock market and bond markets freak out. Powell could refuse to leave, forcing Trump to drag him out of the building the way he did with the leadership of the U.S. Institute for Peace. The prospect of a showdown with armed guards escorting the Fed chair off the premises is... Kevin Hassett, a veteran of Trump's first White House, wrote in his 2021 book, Drift, Stopping America's Slide into Socialism, that firing Powell would have savaged the reputation of the Fed as an objective and independent manager of the nation's money supply. The credibility of the dollar would have been compromised, the stock market might have crashed, doing far more damage to the economy than rate hikes. But now, Hassett, referred to by the bulwark as conservatism's invincible ignoramus, is back in the White House and on the short list to replace Powell.
Very quickly, yes or no answer, does the president, in your view, have the authority to fire the Fed chair?
That's a thing that's being looked into, but certainly if there's cause, he does.
But swapping out Hassett for Powell is only the first step because the commissioner can't set interest rates to whatever Trump wants. That has to be voted on by the full Board of Governors and Open Markets Committee. To ensure the drastic interest rate cuts he wants, Trump would have to fire at least half of them and get the Senate to confirm his cronies. And if that didn't tank the stock market, you'd still wind up back at the Supreme Court where the 6 conservative justices would have to decide whether tut-tutting and saying, "Sir, you should not do that," is less unpleasant than actually upholding the law. Thanks, Chief Justice Roberts.
Thank you again. Thank you again. Won't forget.
Now, all this highlights why it's so important to get a great lawyer when you're dealing with your own case. Now, after I started this channel, every week I'd get hundreds of comments and emails from viewers who are dealing with legal problems. And they'd ask, can you help me find a lawyer? How do I know if this attorney is any good? And there's a massive gap in our justice system. It's that people don't know how to find the right lawyer for their specific situation. They're scared, they're overwhelmed, and they end up doing nothing or hiring the first attorney who calls them back. And that really bothered me. So I started to wonder, what if there was a different way? What if we could build a law firm that actually lived up to the values that I talk about on this channel? Transparency, accessibility, and putting clients first instead of chasing billable hours. A firm where you don't need to pay anything up front and your lawyers only get paid if you do to maximize your opportunity for justice. So a few years ago, I decided to fix that problem. I decided to start my own personal injury law firm. And honestly, it wasn't an easy choice. But I realized I was in this unique position. I had this platform, this community, and the experience. Not to get rich, trust me, there are easier ways to make money than starting a law practice. But we did it because access to justice shouldn't be a luxury. Because finding the right legal representation shouldn't feel like playing Russian roulette with your future. And when you work with my firm, you're not just getting a lawyer. You're getting a team that understands that behind every case is a real person with real stakes. If we can't represent you or you're in a state where we don't practice, we'll take the time to try to match you with an attorney in my personal network of lawyers. A national network of some of the best lawyers in the country who actually specialize in what you're going through, located right where you are, not just whoever happens to be available. So if you're dealing with a personal injury, a car crash, a data breach, sexual harassment, a social security or workers' comp issue, give us a call at the number on screen or click on the link below. Now, I can't represent everyone that watches this channel. I wish I could, but what I can do is make sure that when you need legal help, you have somewhere to turn to that you can trust. So whether it's me handling your case or the incredible attorneys we partnered with, you'll get the same principles of honesty and education that we bring to every video. And if you're dealing with a legal issue and you're not sure where to start, check out the link in the description. Let's have a conversation about how we can help you find not just a lawyer, but the right lawyer for your situation. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, making sure that when life gets complicated, you don't have to face it alone. Which is why when you need a lawyer, you don't just need a legal team, you need the Eagle team.
Take this. Get lost! Oh, shark nami! At your service. Take this. Do you like that?
I don't remember what to do. In this situation.
Out of the way. There's no retreat now.
Lol, just needed to find the dude. I'm not sure. You guys alright? I hope you're using fine.
Out of the way. Take this. Get back. Courage is power. Knowledge is too. Hey.
Stand still.
There's no retreat now. I'm scissors, you're paper.
Ellen, switch up.
Let's hurry it up.
What do I would do with that ore?
Avoid it. Hey! Let's hurry it up.
It's always so painful when someone whose work you've admired for so long pops out a steamy stinker, and a new trailer just dropped for an upcoming movie on Netflix that is spearheaded by legitimately one of the goats of animation, Genndy Tartakovsky. He is the mastermind behind classic bangers like Samurai Jack, Dexter's Lab, more recently Primal, and a trailer just dropped for his newest project, which is a hand-drawn traditional animated film, the first ever produced by Sony Pictures Animation. This is their first hand-drawn animated film, which this has all the ingredients of a masterpiece. Like, you don't get this kind of shit anymore. Big budget hand-drawn 2D animation is a fucking myth in the modern day and age. It's more lost than Atlantis. Studios don't do this anymore. Like, I cannot express just how rare of an occurrence this is. So you've got all the ingredients to a wonderful stew here, brewing up a masterpiece in the cauldron. You've got traditional hand-drawn 2D animation that people have been salivating for years, and you've got the GOAT at the helm, Genndy. What could go wrong? Well, it turns out everything. The project looks like actual dog shit. I'm not even trying to make a pun. That was unintentional. Point is, it looks really bad.
Family, I'd like to introduce you to Bull.
Oh, Nana! Oh, you feel so good. All right. Who doesn't love their Nana?
Why? Just why? Why? With great power comes great responsibility. Did Uncle Ben teach us nothing? Why use this gift, this treat of hand-drawn 2D animation to do this? An R-rated adult comedy about a dog that's about to get neutered, so he goes on a big adventure to use his balls as much as possible before they're gone. It seems like it's Sausage Party, but trying to appeal to zoophiles or something, with a really weird focus on dog asshole. Like, there's a big emphasis on canine butthole in this trailer. And when I was looking up information about this, there was like special mention of dog anus. It's very weird and strange. It's so disappointing, not only because it looks like something you'd be very embarrassed to sit down and watch, like it's like disturbing almost. Like, I feel like there'd be immense shame if you told one of your friends that you watched this movie. And it's very sad that one of the legends in the space, Gindi, is very passionate about this project. He's been pitching it since 2009. So this is something he's wanted for a long time, and it's finally come to fruition. But it's also incredibly disappointing because, again, traditional 2D hand-drawn animation, it's a shiny Pokemon in the modern climate of the world here. You don't get that gift anymore. It's like if Prometheus brought us fire, but we use that fire exclusively to cook Burger King meals. Like, what a waste of potential.
Yeah. Gotta be feeling that, right?
Fuck me.
And suck every bit of fun out of those balls before you lose them.
We're all gonna suck your balls.
What?
That was my handiwork there, censoring the dog's butthole and nutsack flying at the camera. That's not like in the official Netflix cut. I just don't get it. This is like Big Mouth, but with the animal skin on it. It is just my most hated type of animated show. Big Mouth is my least favorite animated show ever, and this has like the very same DNA in it. I can't stand it. I absolutely hate the trailer, and I hate even more that Gindi is making it. That is very, very much a tough pill to swallow as a huge fan of his work. Then in the rest of the trailer, they go to like a dog strip club where a dog is like showing her asshole and then moaning on top of a shoe as she rubs on the shoe. It's just so uncomfortable. And the final shot of their trailer to try and sell you on the comedy here and get you hooked and wanting to watch the full thing when it drops is a scene I don't think I can show you in any capacity. It's a human's hand grabbing the dog's wiener, and then the dog says, "Yeah, that's my dick." What? I was so surprised to see Gindi's name on work like this. I had to double check just to make sure he wasn't just being slandered here. He was being credited for something that he had no part in and just having his reputation ruined for it, like this giant blemish with this work. But no, unfortunately, it does seem this is something he has been pushing for fucking almost 2 decades now, since 2009. So apparently it's something that he's been very strongly enthusiastic about. He's been actively working on it since at least 2018, even though the idea was conceived back in 2009. It was something that kept getting, kicked down the road, but in 2018 it seemed like work started getting done. Gindi himself stated that it's really funny and heartwarming. It's not all about balls. We're trying to make it a character comedy. But, I mean, the trailer was actually all about balls and butthole. There was nothing else in that. I don't really know how you'd turn this into a heartwarming story. Even in just a minute and 30-second bite-sized appetizer, it was really yucky. And I couldn't imagine sitting down to watch a whole film like this. But Gindi really believes strongly in it. I don't know if it's going to be like a successful Netflix original film. It seems like every time Netflix releases a movie, somehow it finds an audience that will watch it, even when it is something that no one's ever heard of. You'll always read about how it did really well on Netflix. So I'm guessing there's just like a bunch of fucking drones out there that anytime a Netflix movie hits the platform, they just endlessly loop it or something. I don't know. So it might end up doing really well numbers-wise, but I have to imagine it's not going to be something that people look fondly upon. It's just weird. Like, no matter how you spin it, it's weird. But even things like Big Mouth, which I think are just revolting, irredeemable dog shit, find a really passionate community, like a really big and enthusiastic audience. So maybe the same will happen to Fixed. I don't really know. I think the most likely outcome here is that it probably won't perform super well for how much it costs to make, because this kind of animation is not cheap, which is why you've seen that it's been phased phased out almost entirely. So this probably will be one of the last oorahs of traditional hand-drawn 2D animation, and it's such a shame for it to go out on a whimper like this. Fuck me, man. Like, that's it. Like, this being the swan song for like a big budget 2D animated project, that is like neutering an entire art form. It's so sad. But again, maybe it does pop off. Maybe somehow it finds a big mouth style crowd. But it won't be me. I am not in that group, and it's really sad that one of my goats in this industry, Gindi, is producing this kind of work that I have no interest in seeing. Now, another thing I think is also very possible with this is a bunch of parents that just sit their kids down in front of the TV or the iPad in order to just endlessly, like, fucking corrode their brain with whatever nonsense scrolls by so that way they don't have to deal with raising their kid. I think there's a good chance they'll put on this thinking that it's a kid's show or a kid's movie, and it's going to be one hell of a blunder there. Anyway, though, I talked about this on stream a little bit and just wanted to talk a little more on it. That's really about it. So, yeah.
Stand still.
Avoid it. Get lost. Get back. Take this.
Take this.
Let's hurry it up.
Limited exit. Nice.
Pirate Software has opened the door to fraud allegations after a leaked DM shows some controversial behavior regarding his mod, bit donations, hype trains, and we're going to get into that today on The Legal Mindset. Of course, I'm Andrew Esquire, American attorney in this Legal Mindset. We teach you to be your own judge in a fast facts format, bringing you the quick and dirty version of the latest news. So Pirate Software has been in the internet news over the past, 3, 4, 5, 6 months for various things that he has been doing. But now we have him actually getting caught in something where there could be real legal liability. Now, to be very clear, we are not addressing the drama today. So we're not going to talk about how he got his party killed in WoW and how he failed to even give a basic
Yay! Бля. Угу. Вот это pushing to pattern subsumty. Mm-hmm. Mm.
Oh.
Ooh, or two. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
The mayor wanted to grant me the title of a White Hunter, but I haven't accepted it for various reasons. Yeah, still very around. The man of integrity, but it means that you're so true. you want to tell me, sure. Key. Yay. Open the one-way mechanical door from the correct direction. $13.50. Well, You know. Oops. Alright, anyway. A bit more Genshin, and then I go to sleep. That's 5. Oops.
Add Astro.
What do you think, Kinich?
Got it. I won't let a house scare anyone.
Scare people? Know that the almighty Dragon Lord's mere presence is an awe-inspiring thing!
Awe-inspiringly pathetic?
Kenich! What did you just say?
Oh, Kinich.
Oh, look who crawled out of their hidey hole. Here to scrape up some work? Too bad. All the lucrative gigs already under the purview of the almighty Dragon Lord, and we...
Ignore a how, traveler. If you'd like any commissions, I can recommend you some. Right. And if you need any help, just ask.
Help? Oh, how noble, how high-minded. How about you?
Shut it, Ahau. Save your breath for the monsters we'll be fighting.
You might want to get a guide if you're not familiar with the area.
Can I just craft? Yes, I can. Okay, let's craft and use that a bit.
Apology and say, hey, look, listen, this was really my fault. I could have done more here. Not try to deflect it, not try to blame everybody equally, but just take responsibility and own up. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about any of the fig tree allegations and whatever he did with a ferret. That's between him and the ferret. We're also not talking about Stop Killing Games, although we did talk about that on a previous episode, and you can tune back and catch my Stop Killing Games commentary. However, one thing we are going to talk about is this fall in subs, because a lot of this does have to do with the fact that Pirate Software, due to all of these controversies, is hemorrhaging subs. And when you are hemorrhaging subs, and I'll bring this up again at the end, this opens you up to a lot of potential problems from people that used to be supporters. So obviously, in the over 104,000 people as of date over the last just 30 days, losing over 104K followers, amongst those certainly are some whales, some people that donated a lot to his channel and now feel really, really hurt, who feel betrayed by Pirate Software. And whenever you have that happen, not only are you going to have more people paying attention to your channel, more people looking for you to make mistakes, more people logging what you're doing, but you're also increasing potential liability because one of those people, any of those people that donated a lot, that felt they gave a lot, might have claim or cause if you end up slipping up and they felt misled, and that might generate some sort of cause of action. And that's something we might have here today. So let's get into it. What happened? So Pirate Software, while live, accidentally showed a DM with his moderator. That DM shows that his mod was purchasing bits to extend Pirate's hype train. Now, that's a Twitch thing, and we're over here on YouTube. We only have hype trains and you guys smashing the like button and commenting on the video, which is always appreciated. But that's a particular mechanism at Twitch, and Pirate Software has actually been known for breaking that record repeatedly. In fact, only recently, I believe the VTuber Vidal, Neurosama over there, beat his record, but previously he'd been setting records as related to this hype train. So it's something that, you know, as a channel, if you're setting records, you're typically pretty proud of that. Now, it appears his DM, the DM with his moderator, it appears his DM was purchasing bits to extend Pirate's hype train. Now, by and in and of itself, and we're going to see that with the terms of service, etc., that probably wouldn't be a problem if the moderator was doing that on their moderator account, right? And the moderator was just, as a moderator, going and donating those bits. However, it was beyond just the moderator doing it. The moderator was donating them not with their main account, but with an alt account, which the mod made Pirate aware of, and which presented itself not as the mod, but as a friend of the mod, as a separate person who was not the mod, which is not true. We're going to see that right today. So I'm going to pull up the actual footage for this. Of course, if you want to catch the full analysis, right, the full breakdown, you can always catch the full version on my live. So here is Pirate Software, and this is the moment in which he was caught in 4K showing the DM. So here's him during gameplay.
Place my head between them and go full burr mode and make...
What? Okay, so here's where he pulls it up, and this is the screenshot. We're going to go into it. I'm going to read it through, but here's the screenshot, and you can see how quickly he's going to click away from this. He's just going to try to clear this out because obviously this does not look good for him.
So this is him pulling it up on stream here, and I'll just go ahead and let the rest of it play, as you guys will see that this is indeed Pirate Software. You can see his messages between Cronus, the ones that we were just showing you, and then you're going to watch.
So you can see he's got it up here. He's going to click away, right? He clicks away pretty quickly, right, to get over here. And by the way, another thing, big credit to Quinn Theo. I'm going to tag his video in the video below for bringing this up and for making this presentation and kind of.
All right. It looks like that's it for the stream, right? Right. So yeah, thanks for watching the video.
The abyss is like the world's shadow.
I'll see you next time.